Tenants and advocates are proposing a permanent rental assistance program from the federal government that would allow tenants to never have to pay rent again. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it has to do with the rental assistance programs. Now, back when they started implementing this stuff, I knew that people would want to make these things permanent, okay? They want to expand the social welfare system and, basically create a socialist government here in the United States. And I am 100% opposed to it. So it doesn't surprise me that I read this article and they were talking about, hey, they want to make it so that the federal government makes rental assistance permanent. There's no mention of where the money is going to come from to make it permanent. Who's going to be paying this rental assistance? No, there's no mention of that at all. They also want to make strong tenant eviction protections permanent as well. So yeah, that's right. They want to make it so that there's a permanent eviction moratorium and permanent rental assistance. And who does this benefit? Well, it's going to benefit those lazy people who don't want to pay their own bills, who don't want to have to work, and just want to be able to live somewhere for free. Because now the taxpayers are going to be the ones who are paying for it. And the landlords are going to be the ones suffering because the government is going to be the ones who regulate how much rent we can charge. Hell, they might as well just take ownership of our properties because that's essentially what this is going to become. This is going to become a socialist system where the government is in charge of the entire rental market. And that is not what I want to see here in this country. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? What do you think of a permanent rental assistance program? Do you think this is a good thing or do you think this is a bad thing? Now, obviously, Section 8 already exists, right? But there are so many different, qualifications that are required for Section 8, whereas the rental assistance programs after the pandemic, they would funnel money to anybody, in any sort of housing as long as they owed their landlord rent. So, there was a lot of fraud involved. And, that any rental assistance program the federal government puts in place going into the future is going to have the same checks and balances as the Section 8 program. And, that's probably why it won't work. Okay. But these tenants and advocates, they're always pushing for someone else to pay their bills for them. Be it the landlord, be it the government, be it whoever. They don't want to pay their own bills. That is the obvious feature here that you see. So what you get is we're trying to help the poor people. Well, the best way is tough love, okay? That's my personal opinion. Tough love means that you don't pay your bills, you get kicked out, okay? You don't pay your rent, you get kicked out. And that will teach you, hey, I got to keep working so that I pay my bills so I don't get kicked out next time, okay? That's tough love right there. Anyway, let's get into this article. So this article is coming from WBAA.org, and it says, Indiana housing advocates, national groups eye permanent federal rental assistance to help with ongoing housing crisis. They think this is the solution, right? More money from the government. Like, inflation isn't bad enough. They want the government to print billions and billions more and then pay the rents for all these people who aren't paying their own bills. No, that's only going to make things worse. Okay, and the crisis is going to continue to go on until we start actually building the amount of housing that we need for the people who live in this country. So let's get into this article. Indiana housing advocates are hoping to see permanent federal rental assistance funding put in place to help with the state's ongoing eviction crisis. Over the pandemic, the federal government put roughly $46 billion towards emergency rental assistance in an effort to avoid an eviction crisis. Now those funds are drying up. In July, Indiana, along with many other states, closed its COVID-19 emergency rental assistance portal. So yeah, Indiana, this isn't the sort of thing I think would happen in Indiana, okay? So Indiana is not known as being one of the more progressive states, okay? It's not known for being anti-landlord. In fact, it's known for being one of the more landlord-friendly places. So when I hear proposals like this, you know what it tells me? That, hey, this plague of socialism is slowly seeping its way all across the country, not just on the coasts, but in the Midwest and the South and all the, traditionally places where it was much more landlord friendly. So that's why I read these articles to warn landlords all across the country, hey, this stuff is coming, okay? Expect it, fight it. Andrew Bradley with Prosperity Indiana said state and national groups hope to see more permanent rental assistance put in place. We want to establish and stand up permanent emergency rental assistance programs and believe they need to be paired with increased tenant protections and supports to address some of those pre-existing conditions, he said. The push for more lasting rental assistance also came up during the state's first Indiana Housing Task Force meeting in September. So yeah, those increased tenant protections are eviction protections, okay? They want to make it as hard as possible for landlords to evict anyone, even if we're not getting paid, okay? They don't care. They want us to be the homeless shelter for people who can't afford their rent. They want us to be the social housing provider. We're public housing now. That's what your job is as the landlord. That's what they think. Okay, and then we're going to put this rental assistance in place. Who is paying for this rental assistance? That's what you really have to ask. Remember, the rental assistance money that was provided before, it was created, but when the federal government started printing money, and guess what? Now inflation is sky high, and our country's really in trouble. So, are we going to keep printing money like this so that we can pay for, people's housing so people don't have to work? No. People need to get back to work. People need to start contributing to this society. 40% of Americans don't pay any federal income tax at all. I mean, that is how many people out there who, just don't even contribute, yet they take money from the federal government. They're getting refunds, okay? They're getting all these welfare benefits, but they're not putting a single penny in. I'm one of those people who believes that everyone should contribute at least a little bit. I'm not saying that, the people who make more shouldn't contribute more. I do believe that having a progressive tax system is an okay thing to a point. What I don't believe in is that there are people out there who don't contribute anything and then get a refund on top of it. Okay? And then they get all these benefits on top of it. That is ridiculous. Dee Ross is the founder and CEO of the Ross Foundation, which oversees the Indianapolis Tenant Rights Union. He said permanent rental assistance is one tool that Indiana should be using to combat the housing crisis. The need is greater than ever before, especially due to rent increases, property taxes increase, the lack of affordable housing, he said. People are starting to wake up and see, man, this is getting out of control. If we don't do something about this now, we're going to be in the top ranks of states in the United States in the housing crisis. That is ridiculous, okay? Now, this is my gripe, okay? This is my gripe with all these people. No matter where you live in this country, the activists, the advocates for tenants, etc., will be like, oh, it is too expensive here. Even if you're living in the least expensive place in the entire country, the most affordable place in the entire country, they'll be like, oh, rent is too high. Rent is too high. No matter what rent costs, rent is too high to them, okay? Because in their world, rent should be free. That's the truth, okay? They're not talking in reality. In the reality, Indiana, like where I live in Nebraska, is a very, very affordable place to live. The housing costs are significantly less than the majority of the country. And it doesn't even make sense that they're talking, oh, well, we're in this. Yeah, you know what? Housing is more expensive than it was before, but everything is more expensive than it was before. And if you can't make it in the most affordable place, in one of the most affordable places in the entire country, then I don't know what to tell you, okay? I don't know what to tell you other than, you just give up hope because you're not going to be able to make it anywhere in this country. Diane Yentl, president and CEO of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, said in a statement that her group was working with Congress even before the pandemic to set up a permanent emergency rental assistance program. She said the Low-Income Housing Coalition has analyzed the many emergency rental programs that sprung up throughout the pandemic. Now we are working with Congress to take these hard-fought lessons learned and authorize a permanent ERA program, Yentl wrote. We have had bipartisan legislation introduced in the Senate and will advocate for Congress to advance and pass this legislation quickly. Yeah, and the pandemic should have been the perfect example of why these rental assistance programs don't work, okay? And instead of actually helping people, eventually be able to get into employment and pay the bills on their own, it had the opposite effect. It told people, well, you don't even need a job. You might as well just stay home. The government will pay for you. It made people lazy, okay? And now we're at a point where there's a shortage of workers in a lot of fields. And was that what they thought was going to be a good plan? Basically the government pays your bills and discourage people from working and make people want to, stay home because they know they have nothing to worry about, because that is exactly what a long-term emergency rental assistance program would do. Okay. We would see less labor force, less people participating in the labor force. We would see higher or lower unemployment, or maybe high, I don't know, just basically more jobs that aren't being filled, and shortage of employees and people doing the jobs that we need because they just decided the government is going to take care of them, and that's the wrong message to be putting out there, okay? And as I said before, these advocates, they were waiting for the pandemic so that they could, try to implement all these socialist programs. Just like I read in the last paragraph, they were trying to implement this stuff before the pandemic existed. So don't be surprised if, you see this sort of thing being proposed in a state near where you invest.